Will the meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, October 5th, 2022, please come to order? This evening's meeting will be a hybrid planning and zoning meeting hosted in person at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, CT, Mononkatuk Room, second floor, as well as virtually by Zoom. During this meeting, our procedures are as follows. 1, when you first enter the Zoom meeting, you'll be in a virtual waiting room until the meeting host admits you. 2, please be aware that your camera, if you have one, and your microphone will be muted by the meeting host when you enter the meeting. You can turn on your camera at any time so that you can be seen by others when and if you choose to. In order to run an efficient and orderly meeting in this virtual environment, unless stated otherwise by the meeting chairman during the meeting host will keep everyone other than the commission members muted. You will still be able to hear everything said by the commission members, even if you're muted and or your camera is not on. There will be opportunity for public comment during the public hearings, at which time public participants will be unmuted. 3, the secretary will read the call of the meeting as published according to Governor Lamont's executive order. 4, during the public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested. The meeting host will share all related documents on the screen as needed. In addition, all applications and supporting materials for each application on the agenda are available through the public meeting calendar page of the town website, www.guilfordct.gov, and also through a direct link on the planning and zoning page. 5, comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from commissioners. 6, there will then be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. As this public hearing must be recorded, it is necessary for speakers to identify themselves each time they speak by stating their name and address. 7, after all clarifying questions are exhausted, those who wish to speak in support of the application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and make a statement. Then those who wish to speak in opposition to the application will be asked to come forward, state their name and address for the record, and make their statement. 8, the applicant will then have an opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. 9, once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearings and the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has a right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. 10, decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Department at 203-453-8039 or by emailing planning.zoning@guilfordct.gov after 9 a.m. 11, all actions taken on applications tonight by the commission will be by roll call. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves to the record before speaking. Seated this evening are the following members who will please identify themselves. Commissioners, Kevin Clark.
Present.
Bill Freeman.
Present.
Philip Johnson.
Here.
Ted Sands.
Here.
Sean Cosgrove.
Here.
Frank DeAndrea.
Here.
And I'm Scott Edmund, Chair. Jason Marchi
Here.
is one of our alternates, and Larry Rizzolo
Here.
is our other alternate. We have a full seat tonight, so both Jason and Larry are alternates tonight. Staff President are Jamie Stein, Town Planner, and also Acting Planning and Zoning Administrative Assistant. This meeting will be recorded via the Zoom platform and made available on the town website for viewing. I do not believe we have a legal notice. Is that correct, Jamie?
Correct.
All right. I entertain a motion to open the public hearing on.
So moved.
Thank you, Phil Johnson.
Second.
I heard a second real fast from Frank DeAndrea. All in favor? Please.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our item on the agenda is Jake's Cherry Street LLC, 397 Church Street, map 74, lot 3, zone I1, site plan and special permit for a dental/medical office. We have some information from the design review committee. Do you want to go over that, Jamie? The motion that they approved.
I see. Sorry, I forgot my audio double teaming here. I see Mr. Kurt Lowenstein virtually. Perhaps Kurt, you can speak about your presentation to the Design Review Committee and their determination.
Sure. Thank you, Jamie. For the record, this is Kurt Lowenstein with Landtech. Our offices are in Westport, Connecticut. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. With me, I do have our attorney, project attorney, Mario Capola, as well as Brian Carey from our office, who is a licensed arborist in Connecticut, as well as a professional wetland scientist. So yes, we were before design review again last Wednesday. They were kind enough to hold a special meeting for us, and we reviewed two things primarily: the revised plantings / site layout and the building itself. Generally positive from them. The site, they're happy with where we are with the proposed plantings, and especially around the southern shared property line there with our neighbor to the south. There were some suggestions made by Design Review Committee as far as some of the species that we're specifying along there, which we're happy to make those changes. And we can, as part of a condition of approval, we can make those changes incorporated. The other portion with the building, which I think there'll still be some information that we need to get to Design Review Committee ultimately, but I think in concept they're accepting of the building. There was just some details as far as the color goes, which we've taken their feedback into consideration. And I spoke with Dr. Tartagni about the main concern being the roof being white and the building being white. And he has agreed that changing the roof to a slightly darker color of gray will be a good complement, and that is in line with what the Design Review Committee was suggesting for us. The draft minutes I see Jamie added into the record, so that does memorialize in much more detail than I can give you here tonight. But like I said, generally positive feedback from Design Review Committee.
Thanks. And Jamie, can confirm that there was a motion and a unanimous approval of the current plan, correct?
Correct.
Sean, since you didn't get to read a legal notice, would you like to read a memo that we have from Janice Plasiak, town engineer?
If someone could put it up, I'd be happy to.
I will do that right now.
Thank you. This is to Planning and Zoning Commission from Janice Plasiak, professional engineer, town engineer, dated September 27th, 2022, 397 Church Street. I reviewed the special permit application for the above. Can you make that a little bit larger?
Sure. That's right.
That's good. That's better. I reviewed the special permit application for the above referenced property. The project is subject to a special permit as provided in section 273-48.d of the regulations, as the proposed 62.4% impervious surface is greater than the 40% allowed in the I-1 zone. Per this section of the regulations, the applicant has submitted a stormwater management plan as provided in section 273-75.f, subparagraph 3, which is consistent with the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual and meets the criteria outlined in the drainage section of the zoning regulations. The site plan for the development will close off an existing driveway on the Route 77 and instead utilize a shared driveway with its neighbors to the north. The development will extend the newly completed sidewalk along the frontage to close off the existing driveway and rebuild a new handicap ramp as part of the development. I would recommend that the existing driveway apron for the driveway they will share with others be replaced as it is uneven and potholed and subject to large puddles. Replacing the driveway apron within the state road right of way would be a great improvement, and narrowing that driveway cut would also be a great improvement if agreeable to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I therefore recommend the following conditions of approval for this project. Number one, the installation of the stormwater systems be inspected and certified by a licensed engineer, that the installation is in compliance with the plans and design intent for the project. Number two, surveyed as-built drawings of the stormwater systems shall be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer, and a maintenance covenant shall be filed on the land records as required by section 273-73.f.3.g. Number three, the existing driveway apron on Route 77 to be utilized for shared access shall be repaved. This driveway cut shall also be narrowed if approved by the Connecticut Department of Transportation.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Lowenstein or Attorney Coppola, have you seen this memo? Are you in agreement with her stipulations?
For the record, Mario Coppola from the law firm of Bircham Moses. I am going to let our engineer, Mr. Lowenstein, respond to that request.
Thanks, Mario. I think all but the reduction of the narrowing of the driveway, absolutely no problem. I spoke with our client regarding this, and given the timing of the project and that it will be, quite a difficult lift with DOT as far as reducing that curb cut. Given the scope of the project already, that would be the only item of it that, if amenable to the commission, we would like to exclude from the condition of approval. But as far as repaving the apron, which I agree with the town engineer, will be a welcome improvement down there because it is potholed up and it does have an icing issue during the winter months.
Is the adversity to reducing the driveway opening just a logistical thing because it will take longer with the state, or is there another? Why would they be recommending that?
The town engineer is recommending it because it is, we're not in disagreement that the driveway opening is not large per se. If you were to do a brand new development, certainly you would have a narrower driveway entrance there. Logistically, as far as timing wise, when you're looking at reducing a curb cut like that, traffic, or not traffic, but sightline studies will need to be done, which will really hang up the project. Is in addition to there's a significant financial component to doing a reduction versus just repaving that. That's why we would request that we are happy to do the repaving, but not reduce the curb cut itself.
Go ahead, Mr. Sands.
Well, it seems to me that the applicant is asking for several variances here, specifically relating to the impermeability standards. And there's all kinds of issues with respect to vegetation, et cetera. This particular request by the town engineer, who is not normally a difficult person to work with. It seems to be, a pretty standard kind of thing. And to say that you don't want to do it, I don't know. That doesn't sit very well with me.
If I may respond to that. First of all, the commission has the right to impose whatever conditions it deems to be appropriate. And if the commission decides to impose that condition as proposed by the town engineer, you have the right to do so. We were asked, again, what we were willing to agree to. Ultimately, you're the decision maker, as I say in court. I don't wear the robe, the judge does, and so essentially, it's a decision of the commission whether or not to impose the condition. We've been asked a question, with regard to what's been proposed by the town engineer. What do we agree to? Essentially, what do we have no issue with? And we've expressed to the commission, where the condition where we would have a concern. Nonetheless, it's ultimately your decision.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Attorney Coppola or Mr. Lowenstein? So
I do have a few things I'd like to address. So,
sure.
Again, thank you again for hearing this application. Hopefully for the last time this evening. As you know, we went back through the design review process again last week, and from the beginning to where we are today, there have been significant changes made to the proposed project. I think we've, especially based on the comment from Commissioner Sands, I just want to reiterate that throughout this process for over a year, we have gone above and beyond, I think, what's required of an applicant typically for a site plan. And I just want to remind people that, starting with the suggestion from the town of changing the driveway entrance and the manner in which we would provide access to and from the property, a suggestion made by the town, a request made by the town for us to contact the Arts Commission and to try to work with them to come up with a solution that would allow for a shared driveway. We did that in the beginning, and thanks in large part to the Arts Commission. And we tried to provide everything that they asked for in exchange for that. And we've made significant changes to the project, including for the neighbor who spoke at your last meeting, as was highlighted in my letter that was submitted about a month ago, which summarized all the significant changes we made to the plans in response to his concerns. There were two issues that were discussed in large part the last meeting, and I just wanted to address them. One, there was a request from the neighbor. First of all, the neighbor brought up his concern about existing trees. And this application isn't about existing trees. We are complying with all the town regulations that would for the proposed construction, and therefore, and so this issue about the existing tree line, I think is a red herring, quite frankly. I think it's an attempt to try to minimize the development of the project. We are in compliance with the regulations. It was suggested by the neighbor at the last meeting that the commission impose a bond of $50,000 with regard to the maintenance of the existing tree line, and the imposition of that type of bond would in fact be it would be illogical, and it would actually be illegal. It's illogical because when you issue conditions of approval, it's for the new construction that's being done, and if there's a bond that's going to be required, it's for new landscaping, which would maybe include new trees. It wouldn't make sense for the commission to impose a requirement of a bond for existing trees, quite frankly, that have been there for many years. Furthermore, it would actually be illegal. The authority of the commission to impose a bond is Connecticut General Statute 8-3 subsection G. And the statute specifically provides in 8-3 subsection G, subsection 1, that the zoning commission may require a financial guarantee in the form of a bond to ensure A, the timely and adequate completion of any site improvements that will be conveyed to or controlled by the municipality, and the implementation of any erosion and sediment controls required during construction activities. The amount of such financial guarantees should be calculated so not as to exceed the anticipated actual costs for the completion of such site improvements or the implementation of such erosion and sediment controls, plus a contingency amount not to exceed 10%. Further on in the statute, it says, in that section of the statute, it says the provisions of this subsection shall apply to all zoning commissions. And then in subsection 2 of that statute, it imposes further restrictions on the issuance of a bond by the commission. I think you have the opportunity to consult with your town attorney to confirm that, but it's fairly clear in the statute. And I'll just point out that approximately 10 years ago, the legislature amended the statute. I think it was with Public Act 11-79, which provided further restrictions on the authority of a commission to impose bonds. The second, so therefore, in conclusion, the imposition of a bond as suggested by the neighbor would be improper and illegal. With regard to the second issue that was discussed at the hearing, I think there was, because of the neighbor's comments, which I think conflated the requirement for impervious coverage with the size of the building. I think there was some discussion about, I think was misguided with regard to the regulation. And one thing that came up in the discussion was, what is enough for us as a commission? Are we setting precedent here if we were to approve the waiver? First of all, the proposed development here is proposing a percentage of impervious coverage that is allowable under your regulations, so long as you grant the waiver. And as your town engineer confirms in her report dated September 27th, 2022, this project in fact complies with that provision of the regulations which allow the commission to grant the waiver, because the applicant has submitted a stormwater management plan as required by section 273-75F subsection 3 of your regulations, which is consistent with the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual and meets the criteria outlined in the drainage section of your zoning regulations. So I think the discussion about, are we setting precedent? You're following your regulations, and you're not just arbitrarily granting a waiver. You're granting a waiver because the project is compliant with the specific requirements set forth in your regulation that in fact allow for the waiver. Furthermore, with regard to, at what point is it too much? In this case, the request here is for 62.4% of impervious coverage. Your regulations, and I think in more than one area or more than one provision of your regulations, in fact, it provides what is too much. That's something that you, the commission, have decided in your regulations. For example, in section 273-352, it provides that total impervious coverage shall not exceed 80%. So yes, you could grant a waiver, but your waiver there's a limitation to how much of a waiver you could grant on impervious coverage. And there's also a standard which you must follow in making a decision to grant the waiver, by confirming that in fact the applicant has submitted the required stormwater management plan, and it's consistent with the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual, which is in fact what we did here, what we did in this application. Before I guess we close with our presentation, I just wanted to introduce to the commission our project team that is here with me this evening. First of all, we have with us Dr. Tartagni, who's a principal of Jake's Cherry Street LLC. Our project team this evening is Wayne Garrick, our architect, Brian Carey from Land Tech, who's an environmental service consultant and arborist, and Kurt Lowenstein, who we've already heard from, who's our professional engineer. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Lowenstein to please take over our presentation at this moment.
Sure.
Thank you, Mario. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate the main point of what Mario just said, you know, the crux of this application before you is on the basis of this waiver of impervious surfaces, which is based upon the stormwater runoff being managed on the site in compliance with your town regulations for stormwater management, and your town engineer has reviewed and approved it. Our stormwater design retains water all the way up to the 100-year storm, which again is in compliance with your stormwater regulations. So I just wanted to, you know, just highlight that further. And then the next thing, and I would have Brian Carey from my office address this, but he is actually currently ill with COVID. He is on, but I'm going to save him from having to strain his voice. We just wanted to address a few of the points that were brought up by Brockway Holdings letters, the one that was submitted the other day and the one from 2 weeks ago. The first being that we, as the applicant, should provide a planting plan that's in accordance, or basically that our planting plan is not in accordance with the standards, the industry standards. And we disagree with that position that they've taken there. In fact, our proposed tree protection and planting details follow the International Society of Arboricultural Standards, which is the industry standard as far as tree protection goes. There's nothing wrong with the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion sediment control, but to imply that our plan is not in any sort of standard is inaccurate. And the second being, they're requesting that all activity be removed from within any of the tree protection, or rather the root zones of the trees along the shared property line. And you know, with the plan we have here, we've worked hand in hand coming up to this point with the neighbor to try to address those comments, and we've restricted all construction activity and grading to the greatest extent possible outside of those zones. As you recall, we did have retaining walls along the southern property line that have been pulled back. They're removed or pulled back to outside of the tree protection zones, which is typically the drip line of the trees. And we've created a vegetated buffer in there. And then the last item is a request that we provide a written tree protection plan submitted to the commission, which we're happy to, if the commission finds it appropriate, that we can provide that as a condition of approval, perhaps prior to a zoning permit, which is, you know, generally the practice that I've seen with commissions in this. But we would leave that up to you, but we would be happy to provide that written plan. But, you know, in summary, I think the plan that we put together, as far as on sheet C3, is the bulk of it for our notes and details outlining how to best protect these trees. I think we've put together a very robust plan and frankly gone above and beyond what you would typically see for even a commercial development such as this. And with that, Mario, if you want to add anything else, otherwise, I think that about does it for me.
I don't have anything further at this time, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we'd like the opportunity for rebuttal.
Sure. Great, thank you. I would ask now at this time, is there anyone from the public that would like to ask a question? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak in opposition to this application? Sure. I have a hand up from the Guilford Arts Center. If you want to unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm sorry. I have a question, actually. This is Maureen
Sure.
Belden. I'm the executive director at Guilford Art Center, 411 Church Street. So I just wanted to clarify that the driveway that's under discussion is actually the property of the Guilford Art Center. We acknowledge that the DOT right away, it connects to our drive. So this causes us to have to redo our driveway to align. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay. Did you have an opposition to Janice's suggestion that the apron itself gets repaved? And that the applicant is saying that they would repave it as part of this project?
I didn't hear what you said. You broke up there.
Sure. Part of Janice's stipulation was that the apron itself that has potholes and whatnot be repaved. The applicant has said that they are happy to do that. Do you have an issue with that part of Janice's stipulation?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that would be great.
Okay. And regarding the sightlines, it sounds like you as the Guilford Art Center would not be looking to do a change to the narrowing the drive. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think I'm saying that.
Okay. You're just saying that it would affect you? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I just want to say that driveway is our driveway.
Sure.
So that anything that gets done is going to affect us. So we agree that it should be repaved. We appreciate the engineer's report, but we just want to clarify that it is our property.
Understood. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is that everything? All right. Thank you. Mr. Marchese, would you like to speak in opposition to this application?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Chris Marchese. I'm the owner of the Brockway Professional Center, 385 Church Street. Share the southern and eastern property boundary with the applicant. Again, thank you for your time. I presented my concerns with the proposed development now a few times, so I'll keep this as brief as I can. I'll say off the top that I wouldn't consider my concerns about the tree line or the other issues a red herring. So I appreciate if you do hear me out and take my concerns seriously. I am not opposed to development, as I've said, of the subject site. I just want it done in a responsible manner, and I do have a couple of requests, and I want to reiterate those. Issue number one is the impervious surface standard and the waiver being requested, which is the standard is 40%, and the applicant's proposing to go to 62.5%. I think a waiver of this magnitude certainly allows for the building more site development, more parking, more vehicle drives, et cetera. Everything gets bigger and pushes the development out to further to the property lines. That's what happens when you allow more impervious surface than what the standard allows. This means less pervious areas, less buffer. The applicant has received approval of its stormwater plan, but I submit to the commission that is not the only thing that the commission has to evaluate when considering whether a waiver of this magnitude is appropriate. And it may not just be the waiver. I think you as a commission can look at many other aspects of the development. It doesn't just have to be the waiver. And so that is one aspect of it, but you may look at the other aspects of it. The size of the structure, the distance that the development gets to the property lines. Like I said, there's certainly nothing wrong with developing a lot in an industrial zone, but it doesn't need to be one where a waiver is required for no apparent other reason other than to, as the applicants say to themselves, to increase rental income beyond what they need for their own business as a dental office. And I've said before that I believe that this is precedent setting if the commission allows approval. Am I using that in a technical term? I'm using it from the perspective of common sense. If the commission allows 62.5% impervious surface waiver, then what's going to happen the next time a developer comes in? I'm a developer, and and my property I can develop as well further. And if all of a sudden I can use 62.5%, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't the next developer? Unless there's a reason that the commission can look at and say, we're going to go from the 40% to the 62.5%. And there's a reason behind that, a rational reason, justified reason. Then what's going to prevent you? How would you deny that another applicant a project where they request the same thing? I don't know how you do that. I ask you to consider that and think about it. So, but I would suggest that if you approve this and then I come in for a request for the same 62.5 for no apparent reason, then that would become the de facto impervious standard. So I ask that you consider the consequences of this request and deny it as proposed. Issue number 2 is the shared tree line. We've documented that numerous mature boundary line trees are located on the property line co-owned by Brockway and the applicant. My tenants and employees want to see these trees preserved and to thrive into the future. In my most recent comment letter that I submitted, I included the applicant's drawing, the development drawing, with an overlay. And Jamie, is that something that you could bring up for me?
Sure.
It's attached to my my comment letter.
Keep talking. I'll get it up there.
Yeah. So I submitted a comment letter and a drawing attached to that, which is the applicant's drawing showing the development. And on that drawing, we delineate the tree protection zone.
I can do it, Jamie.
Pardon me?
I was just telling Jamie I have it open.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I think I got it, but thank you.
Yeah, flip to the end of that.
Okay. Oh, just have. There you go. It might take a minute to load.
Yep. So if you can move that maybe over, yeah, great, a little bit further over, good. Okay, so what we show here is as an overlay on the applicant's drawing, the tree protection zone and the critical root zone per the state of Connecticut guidelines. Now, why do I use the Connecticut state guidelines? Because we're in the state of Connecticut. I don't use the international guidelines. I'm using the state of Connecticut guidelines. And I think it's appropriate. Mr. Lowenstein said it was appropriate to use it. We think that's probably the most appropriate given the state we live in. So this delineation shows the critical root zone and the tree protection zone in red and in green. And you can see the various components of the development intersect with it. You see the contours that they have with contour lines. I can't point to it myself, but if you look at the southern, right in that area, there's down below, a little bit below, there's some lines with numbers on them. Yeah, those are fill lines. These contours either denote grading, excavation, or filling. In that particular area, it's filling. And filling is known to have equal damage to trees as is grading. But you also have grading going on in this area where you're building the parking lot and installing the septic system. So clearly there's significant, and the same thing on the other end of the site, there's filling going on within both the tree protection zone and the critical root zone. So, I guess if you're inclined to approve the applicant's request for a waiver based on the impervious surface or for any other reason, I simply ask that before, not as a condition of approval, but before you vote on this application, require the applicant to submit a specific written tree protection plan, not a planting plan, as Mr. Lowenstein had indicated, a tree protection plan and revised development plans where work is shown to not intersect and create issues within the tree protection zone and the critical root zone. I really don't think this is an overly burdensome request. They may need to scale back the development slightly or get creative, but to approve the impervious surface at 62, 63%, when they could keep the development out of the tree protection zone and the critical root zone with a waiver request, probably at somewhere like 55%. If you even want to go to that extent, which is precedent setting, but by dropping it down to somewhere around 55%, this development can proceed forward and you could be outside of those zones. There are alternatives. This is not the only way of going about developing this site. And you as a commission have the ability, the attorney for the applicant made it seem like you had no options, but you are the commission and you can impose restrictions. You can ask for a tree protection study so that this development is respectful of that mature tree line, especially when they're asking for a waiver. Just because the standards allow for up to 80% doesn't mean that you are obligated to give them 80%. You can give them 0% above the 40, or you can give them 5 or 6% above that, anywhere in there. And so I'm just asking that you consider revised development plans and a tree protection plan prior to development of the project, prior to approval of the project, so we can all look at it. Their plans do have notes on it, but that's a far cry from seeing specifics about very specific items that we would like to look at, review, and approve. And I think it would benefit you. But most importantly is to show that you're being respectful, careful of the tree protection zone and the critical root zone as put out by the state of Connecticut. My last request in the letter was about the bond. I'll let that stand. I'm not an attorney, so I don't know the requirement on the bond, but the concept is if the bond is not something that you could allow, and I would prefer the town attorney take a look at that, but if it's not something that's allowed, which is intended simply to ensure that the trees are not impacted, and if they are, then we have a replacement. If that's not a possibility and the applicant's not willing to do it voluntarily, then consider my other two requests and put more weight on those, where you don't allow the impervious surface as requested, possibly it gets scaled back, and they put together a tree protection plan to keep out of those two zones that I asked for and noted. So with that, I appreciate your time, and I'm certainly available and open to questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott,
Yes.
could you keep that up? I had a question about that drawing
Sure,
that you
one-
created.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thanks. I don't know how to raise my hand. I guess I just go like that.
Yeah, it's hard with.
So, Mr. Marchese, I have a question. You put these circles in here and I'm kind of looking at it, and then I see that, is that a parking area that's down below there that's got a curbing in it, or is that like just a field, or what is that?
That is a grass area on, if you're talking about south of the shared property line.
No, there's it looks like curbing there. It comes off of the catch basin and goes around. What's below that curbing?
On my property?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not sure exactly where you're pointing.
I can't point, but so you
Well,
see a catch basin.
You're starting here and you're working this way, Bill?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's all vegetated area. That's lawn or landscaping.
Is this the curb for a
that's-
parking lot, Mr. Marchese?
That's the drive into the property.
So is that paved there?
The drive in, not the area in between the property line.
Right, but my concern is that these radiuses all encroach into that paved area. So there was obviously disturbances there in the past, and just seems as that it's kind of the same as what the applicant is asking to do.
It is what they're asking to do. I was not aware of this issue when I developed the property back in 2004. I'm much more educated on the issue now and have professionals that have advised me. If I could do it again, I probably would do it differently. 15 years have gone by and you learn and get better.
Right. Okay. It just seems like.
And in fact, we have the property to do it, sir. So.
No, but I'm saying that your disturbances obviously went directly into the radiuses that you're showing here, but they sort of stop at the property line. But if I extrapolate them around, it looks like they go right into the parking area.
Yeah. And 15 years later, the trees have survived. They've done well to most extent. I think a second set of damage or a second hit probably would not be as well received by the trees.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the, thanks to Mr. Marchese, anything else from the public, anyone else from the public that would want to speak in opposition to this application? Okay, Mr. Copeland, do you have any?
Sorry if I
Yes.
could. Last meeting, we did not read our environmental planner's memo into the record, so I asked that we do that this evening.
Would you mind bringing it up? I haven't prepared.
Yep, no
Have
problem.
that one up prepared for that. And let's get Mr. Philip Johnson to read this one for us. You look
All right,
excited. Phil.
if you could pull it up, that'd be great.
I'm working on it, Bill, sorry.
She's working on
All
it.
right,
I just gotta zoom in a little.
Pat, after we do this, can we ask a couple questions too?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna throw it back to Attorney Coppola, so.
To the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission from Kevin McGee, Environmental Planner, RE Site Plan and Special Permit, Jake's Cherry Street LLC, 397 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut, 06437, Assessors Map 74, Lot 9. Jake's Cherry Street LLC proposes to construct a two-story, 9,704 square foot medical office building. The applicant has requested an exemption for exceeding the impervious surface requirements for an I-1 zone. To meet the requirements of the exemption, the applicant is proposing to install a stormwater management system consisting of roof leaders and catch basins discharging to underground infiltration systems designed to infiltrate up to the 25-year storm. The plans for the project have sedimentation and erosion control procedures that are in compliance with 273-97B subsection 6 of the zoning regulations. Inland wetlands are located on the east side of the property. At the inland wetlands meeting on February 9th, 2022, the Guilford Inland Wetlands Commission approved a regulated activity for that the Guilford Inland Wetlands Commission approves a regulated activity with conditions for 397 Church Street, map 74, lot 3, regulated activity, construction of a new 9,726 square foot medical office building with associated site improvements, including stormwater, drainage, parking, landscaping within 100-foot jurisdictional review zone. I recommend the following conditions of approval in order to make sure that the natural resources are protected. 1, a licensed engineer shall oversee the installation of the stormwater management system. The licensed engineer shall provide a final report to the zoning enforcement officer. 2, the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer shall be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site work. Soil stockpiles should be contained by silt fencing or hay bales. Erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement. 3, to assure future compliance of stormwater management system in accordance with section 273-75F of the zoning code. A written maintenance and operation manual for all stormwater management systems located at the subject site. The manual should provide provisions for yearly inspections, maintenance of stormwater systems, and yearly reports to the town engineer. The maintenance schedule should include, but not be limited to, weekly, monthly, and quarterly inspections of the property for litter, monitoring the dumpster and outside storage areas, monitoring of catch basins, the removal of accumulated materials and non-native invasive species in the detention basins and energy dissipator. The maintenance plan needs to provide a statement that the stormwater management plan will be reviewed annually so that inspection/maintenance requirements may be modified and that any changes to the plan would require approval of the town engineer. B, an as-built drawing of the completed stormwater system prepared in accordance with section 273-75F, stormwater management subsection 6, construction. C, the applicant shall file a maintenance covenant in the land records as required by section 273-75F, stormwater management subsection 7, maintenance covenants of the town of Guilford zoning code.
Thank you. Mr. Lowenstein, I believe those are all things that has already been discussed to this point, correct?
Yes, and we're in agreement with all of those conditions.
Okay, any other questions for commissioners? Mr. Johnson.
So are we technically issuing just a waiver of the coverage, or are we issuing a special permit that allows for that?
It's a special permit, and as part of the special permit, there's a waiver.
So are there any other considerations for the special permit other than compliance with stormwater per the town engineer's memo?
Well, all the normal special permit stipulations.
And have we addressed all those?
Well, as far as requirements,
So like normally for a special permit, we would, say, is this impactful upon neighbors in a positive or negative way?
sure, but that's for us to discuss, right?
Well, I mean, we haven't had anything presented to us on that, so I'm just.
Great. Is that a question for Attorney Coppola then?
No, it's actually just for us, as to what are the criteria, that we have to check, what boxes do we have to check in order to grant a special permit?
Agreed. That's the standard ones.
And then I guess the kind of on topic, but I don't recall us granting such a waiver in the past. And Jamie, maybe you can help me identify examples where we have done this. Because Frank, I mean, you've been here longer than I have, but I've been here a while. I don't remember any.
Nothing was popping, but I'm getting older and my mind's not older.
I did actually go and look at this a little bit, Phil, probably when we first heard the application. I didn't do an extensive search back in the archives, but the one example that I did arrive at was actually the Guilford Art Center. And it was an example in which, in order not to exceed their impervious coverage, they chose a different material, pervious heater. So that was sort of a way of getting around, I guess, having to go for the waiver. That is the only, albeit a little tangential, example that I've come across.
So, Jamie, did the Art Center go for a more pervious surface?
They did.
And would the applicant consider that?
I could respond if you'd like, on behalf of the applicant.
Yep.
So just take us all, I guess, back, get ourselves all a little bit more perspective here. But for the request for the waiver, this is a simple site plan application, and we would not trigger your special permit review. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding here. And so, quite frankly, the choice of material is what's necessitating the waiver, and that's where maybe you've even heard of my comments. I've been getting frustrated when we keep hearing in public comment about the size of the building, which really the issue of impervious coverage is one that has to do with stormwater management. We're fully compliant with your stormwater management regulations. And so we have considered doing potentially pervious, something pervious rather than the impervious pavement that we proposed to date. And really from an aesthetic standpoint, we don't think it looks as good. There's issues of transition from impervious to pervious. And quite frankly, I mean, I'll tell you that again, as I've stated before, this applicant isn't just going to, rent this property. He's using it. He's going to be there, and the aesthetics are important to him. And so that was the main driver for the decision to request a waiver, was the aesthetics and coming up with the best plan for developing this property. And I want to remind the commission that this proposed development is going to be a vast improvement from what's there today. And I think that it's important to reiterate that. If I may at this time, can I address some of the comments that were made in public, or would you, Mr. Chairman, would you like to wait for the commission to have further questions? Okay. So with regard to the comment from, or the concern raised by Ms. Belden from the Art Center, just so you know, I mean, that is one of the reasons why we would not agree to the request with regard to shortening the apron. As you know, there's certain area of the shared driveway that's owned by the Art Center. So just in response as well to Commissioner Sand's comment earlier, we certainly try to do the best we can to please as many people as possible, including the commission, with regard to this application. We assume we didn't have to ask for the Art Center's permission to, at our cost, improve the driveway there, which we are willing to do, and is a benefit, quite frankly, for the Art Center and for the area. With regard to the comments that Mr. Marchese made, he started off by saying he's not opposed to the development, but rather just wants a responsible development. This is a responsible development. This is a development which complies with all of your regulations. Again, the waiver that we're requesting from you is permitted under your regulation. We, in fact, comply with all your regulations. And just to clarify for the record, we are not requesting any variance from your regulations. Again, the waiver is something that is allowed under certain provisions of your regulations. With regard to the requirements that he's asking you to impose, we think it would be improper. We are complying with your regulations. He has requested that you apply a greater standard to this applicant, greater than you've applied to anybody else in town. In fact, as Commissioner Freeman aptly pointed out, and I'm appreciative that he did, he wants you to apply a standard that wasn't even applied to his property. And quite frankly, he wants you to apply a standard that his property would in fact violate if it was before you today. That is patently unfair. And quite frankly, if the standard that he is citing is so important, then he could come to the commission at some future date and propose that you amend your regulations to require that type of standard. Although, quite frankly, I think imposing such a standard with regard to existing trees is not only impractical, but possibly illegal under your authority as derived from the Connecticut General Statutes. With regard to the tree protection, again, we've made significant changes to the regulation, to the application, to the proposal. I would again point the commission to my letter dated September 9th, which highlighted numerous changes that we made to the proposed development in response to concerns that Mr. Marchese had given to us both at the meetings and during a site visit that we engaged in with him. So at this time, I don't have anything further but to just reiterate our desire to proceed with a development that we think will be a great improvement for this property and will be consistent with the neighboring properties there, including the Art Center and Mr. Marchese's property, which has been referenced during this discussion. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And obviously, I'm here to answer any further questions if you'd like.
Thanks. Any further questions from commissioners? Yes, Mr. Johnson.
I guess this one goes more to Chuck. Chuck, I can't think of another regulation that allows us to just waive something like a coverage requirement without it going to the zoning board of appeals. Why is this, and you can say, I don't know, why is this coming to us for a waiver versus going to the zoning board of appeals for a review and request for a waiver of this regulation?
I think a variance would have been an option as well that a developer could have undertaken if they had desired to do so. The question, that said, it is within your regulations. It's not a simple waiver, it's a special permit. I think it's been pointed out there are criteria for a special permit. The general criteria, I think it's 27380. The other thing I can think of in the regulations, and I know it's come up a couple times regarding parking, that if you want to reduce parking or something, you can do so by special permit, or you can, or change of a nonconformity from one use to another by special permit. I think that is somewhere in the regulations that came up in the U-Haul application, because the only ones I know are the ones that end up going to litigation, but that was one of the applications. One of the things the developer had applied for in that case, that was to, there was an element of nonconformity in the parking in that case, but there was something in the regulations that allowed you to change from one nonconforming use to another to a less offensive nonconforming use by special permit. And you could say, well, they could apply for a variance for that as well, and they could have. But so that's, I think what they're doing is it's in the regulations. Query whether it should be in the regulations, but it is, and that's what they're applying.
Thanks, Chuck. Any other questions from commissioners? All right. If there are other questions, then I'd entertain a motion to.
I'm sorry, Scott.
Sure, Kevin, go ahead.
Sorry. So Jamie, when you looked into the Guilford Arts Center permit, after they agreed to use the pervious surface, did that drop them to the 40% or below, or were they still above?
Yeah, I don't think there was any, this is Jamie. I don't think there was any discussion about seeking the waiver. It was, if y'all remember, Russ Campaign brought that forward a couple of years ago with the site plan modification for the art center. I think they were adding an additional building. And I see that Ms. Belden has joined again. And in order to not exceed the impervious coverage, pervious pavers were utilized.
Okay, so then I guess the upshot of that is that by using that, they didn't go above the 40% and didn't need to ask for a waiver.
Correct.
Okay. Second question, Jamie, you copy and pasted some language from the zoning regulations to us in an email.
Yes.
And referencing section E of that, it mentioned shared parking shall be encouraged. Is there an opportunity here with this application with the neighbors to actually share parking and hopefully maybe reduce some of the parking that's being proposed now with this application? Shrinking the footprint. Thought I'd ask.
Attorney Koba, do you have a response?
I believe we've agreed with the Art Center and to provide for shared parking to the extent that the Art Center would like to use our property for overflow parking as they need it, trying to be a good neighbor. So to the extent that there is a need for the Art Center to have shared parking, we're going to provide that on our property for them.
What about vice versa? What about you using their parking, mitigating the need for so much parking on your site?
They, I can't speak for the Art Center. I can't speak for imposing that type of obligation on another property. Again, we certainly have agreed to provide for them to have overflow parking onto our property. One thing I would point out, though, is that this whole issue with the issue of the impervious coverage requirement. The requirement is there for stormwater management, for the concern of stormwater management. And here we have a plan that will in fact, that is in fact compliant with your regulations and requirements for stormwater management. And so, you know, I mean, I think that respectfully, I would say, I think that should be the first and foremost factor that gets considered in deciding whether to grant the waiver here. Because that's what this requirement has to do with, stormwater management. And that's not an issue with regard to this proposed development. I've heard some concerns about other things like existing trees, but stormwater management is not an issue.
And just for the record, too, are you guys following the guidance document for low impact development, best management practices for stormwater? I know Janice said you're using the Connecticut.
Yes,
Okay, just.
The low impact development guidelines are included in the stormwater quality manual.
Okay, thank
So
you.
there's provisions in there.
Just to put a bow on the impervious, Jamie or Kevin, I'm not sure which would be the best to answer, but would inland wetlands have anything to say about changing the parking from pervious to impervious? Would that affect how they would feel about the application?
Kevin, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start. Thank you. I do know that on our wetlands walk, the issue did come up. It was actually brought up by the engineer on our first walkthrough. I have to say the commission was pretty excited about it. And then when we carried forth to the next night meeting, it was brought up again by a couple commission members, and the applicant had decided to back off on it for the stated examples or reasons that Mr. Coppola had mentioned. So what I would say is that would have been great, but it was approved with impervious surface, not the pervious surface. So if they were to change to that, I don't think that would need to come back to the Wetlands Commission, because that would actually be a better application. It would be a modification that has less impact. That would be my judgment on it, and how we've done things in the past.
Jamie?
Yeah, I did have two conversations with the town environmental planner, in the wetlands administrator, Kevin McGee, as well as town engineer, Janice Blasiak, regarding this particular topic. You know, I think that there are some concerns about the maintenance associated with pervious pavers. And in the Northeast, some of the freezing, thawing and heaving that can happen is a concern. But I think a little bit of the way that the applicant is managing stormwater currently, they would not really change that because of this potential, clogging of the porous spaces in the pavers. And it's viewed as more of a belts and suspenders, that it will work for a little bit as pervious pavers, and if it happens to clog, it's okay, because the applicant's stormwater management plan is in place to handle it as if it were impervious.
Okay. Thank you. Any other further questions from commissioners?
I guess I would ask just one thing, if we could just review the criteria under 273-80.
Sure.
Like what exactly are the specifics of that? Do we have that readily available?
We'll have to look it up. Jamie, you want to work on that?
I'm looking, Scott, I'm looking.
Thanks.
Would you like us to put it on the screen for you?
If you have it readily available, sure.
Mr. Lowenstein, I know he had it readily available and he was able to do the screen share. Mr. Lowenstein, could you put that up for the commission, please?
We're looking for 273-80.
Yes.
Correct.
Sure.
While we're waiting for him to do that,
Give me
Mr.
one
Chair,
moment.
if I just take the opportunity to also add, as your planner had had referenced the issue with maintenance and long-term stability of the pervious pavers. I'd be remiss not to also say that those are also concerns when I refer to the aesthetics, transitioning from impervious to pervious. I probably should have given more detail. Also, a big part of that is the aesthetics of how it's going to look over the year if you were to go to pervious in years later, where it could be damaged. Aside from issues with maintenance and effectiveness, it generally doesn't look as nice in future years, and that was a concern for us as well.
Everybody can see that on the screen, okay? Do we need to, you need
Yes.
to zoom in a little bit, or is that all right?
Zoom in if you
Fine.
could. Thank
How's
you.
that?
Great. That's great.
And I'm sorry, which section specific, or which subsection under 80 were we looking for?
This is it.
I
think it
believe
was
we
just the entire.
kind of have to comply with them all generally.
Wanted to see this. I believe he wanted this, the commissioner wanted to see the standards for a special permit.
Yep.
And I'd reiterate for the record that we've also reviewed the standards for a special permit, and we believe that our application is fully compliant with those standards.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, I'd ask, there's a motion to close the public hearing on this item.
I've said,
Second,
Thank you, Bill Freeman. Second from Philip Johnson. We'll do a roll call vote. Kevin Clark,
Yes.
Bill Freeman. Ted Sands. You're muted, Ted, but
Yes.
thank you. Philip Johnson,
yes.
Sean Cosgrove,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Thank you. We'll do, just Attorney Capolosi, you're aware, the plan is to deliberate on this item tonight. And then in association with speaking with our town attorney. And from there, we'll develop a motion that'll probably be in our next meeting, Janie. Is that the plan?
Correct,
That we'll then vote on,
October 19th.
just so you have an idea of where we're headed with this. All right,
Thank you for your time and consideration.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That'll end our public portion. We'll move on to deliberation of public hearing items. Jake Sherry Street LLC, 397 Church Street, map 74, lot 3, zone I1, site plan and special permit for dental/medical office. Deliberation. Does anybody want to kick us off?
Come on, Phil. I see you.
Well, I mean, I'll open, but I'm not sure quite why we have the standards that we have, if we can just waive them. And I appreciate that the coverage, the impervious coverage is probably mostly designed to manage stormwater runoff. And if that's been addressed, then that major concern should probably be taken off the table. But I am concerned about it being potentially precedent setting about, exceeding our standard by more than 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I look at it from the point of view of, I almost feel like this is the reason why this situation is actually a pretty unique one and is therefore a reason why we might consider doing a waiver. And the consideration I'm thinking of is they're presenting a building that's basically the same size as all the buildings next to them. They're presenting parking that's about the same size as the buildings next to them. And it just happens that this lot specifically is very, very small compared to the lots around them. And for me, that actually seems like a reason that we would consider doing that, the waiver in this case. And it also for me presents a situation that I think is pretty more unique. I mean, that's just kind of the point of view that I'm looking at the moment. I don't know if I agree with that point of view.
I mean, they kind of knew the size of the lot going in. So it's not like you can say, well, they came up with a plan, but their lot's not big enough for the plan. I mean, again, I'm just.
Sure.
So I think in keeping with what Phil was saying, though, we have to focus on what we're being asked to analyze and visit management. They've shown that they've managed the water. I think that the tree conversation has been helpful, maybe with protecting it a bit more, but also really isn't germane to what we're supposed to be deliberating here. It's just something that was requested by the neighbor. In the same token, the neighbor to the other side is the art people, and they're ecstatic. You know, they're going to have, they're very happy with the situation. So we have kind of a balance there. But I really think we need to just focus on whether the engineering is proper and the statutes or the ability to do this is in the regulations. So we should be able to just accept that it's there. And if we don't like it, move it out of it in the future.
Yeah, I agree with all of those comments from Phil's to Bill's. I guess my struggle is going to be going in the future with that 80 up to 80%, so where we can't exceed 80%. Where did that number come from? So when they talk about these arbitrary numbers, that's something that is concerning that I think needs to be addressed, but that's a different time and a different meeting.
I think it is, and I do think that you know, I'm not sure where the percentages of impervious surfaces came from.
That was what I was wondering. Who made that number up?
I know many years passed, but we are in a whole new climate era, and I think that we have to take that into consideration. It may not be something that we can address with this particular application, but you know, as we move forward, I think it's something that we should consider revisiting.
Well, look,
I think that the aesthetics of impervious pervious surfaces is, you know, I didn't like it. I get it. If I were a property owner, I would probably want to have something that looked perfect. But you know, that's something else that we should think about. You know, pavement everywhere is just not going to work in an era we're moving into, where there's just going to be a lot more moisture.
I think that the problem that I've run into with the pervious stuff is that it fails, particularly the pervious blacktops that they use around here with the sand and everything in the winters and stuff. It just fails immediately. It's not a very good source.
So Bill, it cracks and just.
Well, it just fills up. The perviousness goes away, so it's
Right.
not really pervious anymore. I mean, I have seen in private, you know, driveways where people will put the little, you know, I've done this with the little squares with the gravel in them and stuff. But on a commercial level, it's again not maintenance wise. I don't know if it necessarily works with plows and snow and all these things. So
Yeah,
I think,
right.
I mean, and I agree that you know, I think that that the engineer in this case has done the best they could to mitigate the runoff by keeping it all on their property. And so I think we just have to take Janice's comments and listen to them.
All right, one final, I will stop talking, but one final comment. I've brought this up numerous times over more than 1 year, and that is about stormwater maintenance and the inspections. Who the hell is inspecting these stormwater maintenance systems? And I've been meaning to go down and talk to, and I'm sure she will not like to see me, and talk to Janet about whether they are being inspected. Because that is in regulations, and if they're not being inspected, what's the point of having a regulation? Does anybody have any response to that?
I mean, I think in this case, the inspection is incumbent upon the applicant. And the property.
They're required to file a plan.
File a plan, but if it's not, but there is also an aspect of the regulation that calls for inspection.
I can give you perhaps a lead on that, Sean, but not a definitive answer. I have asked that question because you have raised it in the past. And it is my understanding that the MS4 permit and our compliance with that, which is called municipal something, stormwater, something, I'm sorry, is fully within the purview of our town engineer's office. So she would have the answer on the inspection and the maintenance.
My guess, Sean, would be it would need to be an increase in funds to that department. My point is we're approving things that go into a black hole. And that's just not So,
right.
yeah, but at the same time, is that, so we just don't approve anything going forward?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not.
I think to Sean's point, he's
point.
just bringing it up because he wants to keep it alive. And I agree.
Hear that. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, it's like why is it even in the regulations if it's not going to be enforced? Why even have it in there? It's a cut and paste standard in the approval standards for an application and ignored.
Maybe it's aspirational, like we'd like to hope. I mean, I hear you on the enforcement, but if you can tell the applicants that you need to inspect it, you need to maintain, I mean, at least you're saying it. The fact that we're not having somebody barking at them and going out and making sure it's done, at least we're telling them it's supposed to be done. I mean, I know that's not a perfect scenario. It's not even close. But
question for Attorney Andrus. Even though I'm not seated tonight, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, I know. Technically, you said that. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, not on this one. You can. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's right.
I just needed clarification that I understood even if you weren't seated, you could always make comments and talk about things. So is that incorrect?
That's incorrect. Yeah, it's a 7-member commission, and once you have alternates speak during deliberations, it's becomes an 8.
No good. Okay, thank you very much, because that was a
you can do it before it's closed, right?
Yeah, you can do it. Actually, the alternates can participate in public hearings. So right, because you don't know who's going to vote. You close the public hearing and pick it up next week, and someone's gone, and so the alternates step in. So alternates can always participate and ask questions during public hearings. But once you start deliberations, it's only the seated people.
Okay, thank you.
I was an alternate listening on U-Haul, but thankfully I did not have to make a vote on that one. Ted Zance, I think you had something you wanted to.
Yeah, 2 points. Sean, on the question of inspections, I guess what it would come down to is if there was, what I think it's going to take to change the way this is done is for there to be a failure of one of these systems at some point in the future. And then everybody said, well, wait a second, how come the inspections weren't made? And why did there was a clear failure and et cetera. And that's how you get these things corrected. But I want to go back to the trees on the shared property line.
Can we just hold on? Hey, Chuck, is it within the purview of this commission to address the tree issue?
You cannot require a bond to, the request was a $50,000 bond that could be drawn on if any die, and the answer is you cannot do that. The authority to impose bonds is limited for public improvements and for soil erosion controls and for certain other things if they want to get a CO, but not just maintaining existing vegetation.
Okay, fine. But let me ask a question. Let's assume that we approve this thing. They go ahead, they do the construction, all the trees die. Now what happens?
There's a potential civil lawsuit insofar as the trees are on the property or on the shared property and partially owned, then there's a claim, you know, a civil claim from one property owner versus another. I mean, that remedy exists.
So from the point of view of the neighbor, there is the request for the bond is something that we can't do. And you're saying that there is, in a civil litigation format, there is a way for the neighbor to get compensated if these trees in fact are damaged as a result of the construction.
But Ted, they would have to prove that.
I was about to say that's a pretty high bar. Trees die all the time.
Right.
I mean, if you drive around, you see the number of oak trees that are just standing and dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be an expensive and difficult suit to win.
Yeah.
So I guess then packaging the question in a different format, going around the commission, do you feel that there's so what I saw of the plans, in my review of the plans, there's at least one full page, if not more, where they describe everything related to protecting trees. And from my experience of plans, that's pretty extensive compared to what I've seen on a lot of plan sets. Do others have opinions about whether or not what's currently been presented in the application is us doing our due process to look out for the neighbor or no?
I have never seen anything like that myself either, and I think that the applicant has gone pretty far along in trying to assuage any fears that the neighbor has, and didn't necessarily have to do that. So I think they've done a fair and balanced approach to being a good neighbor, and so I think it's a little unusual, as they said, but I think that the person pushed it enough to the point where they had to do that. So I think they did a good job.
Anyone else have an opinion? Yeah, Mr. Clark.
So I guess the point of this deliberation is to kind of give Jamie a sense of how to write the motion for the next meeting. I'm kind of having a hard time figuring out what side people are going to fall on the issue. I would just say my 2 cents is that right now I kind of lean in the camp of I think this is a bad precedent. As someone who's probably going to have a number of years left on the commission, knock on wood, I don't look forward for the next 7 years. People bring it up. Well, you passed it for Jake's Cherry Street. They went 20% higher. We want to go 20% higher. We want to go 30% higher. I don't want that thrown back in our face, or at least my face, for the next 7 years. So I just think it's a bad precedent. I'd like to see them come down another 10%. on the impervious surface. If they did that, then that leaves plenty of room for the trees, and the trees don't, there's no issue of the trees being harmed. Takes that out of play completely. I don't know. I think a lot of times engineers they're intelligent people, bless them, but I think a lot of times they think they can engineer their way out of anything. And I think a lot of times they say what they think they need to say to get their application passed by local commission. So I'm a little concerned about precedent, to say the least.
Sure. When we heard from, I guess we've heard from everyone now. All right, so yeah, we'll have to go around and similar to Kevin, declare on which direction you're leaning at this point, so we can provide Jamie and Chuck with the correct direction when it comes to the motion.
Well, I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
I think we have to, within the scope and the limitations of the regulations that we have, I think the motion should have the stipulations that stay within the scope of our regulations. But I think Kevin's comments, I really agree with Kevin's comments that, to set a precedent is to set us up and our future commissioners set up to have a difficult task ahead of them in the future.
So, yeah, precedent isn't exactly an argument that we can make, correct? So it's
I get that. I get that.
So the arguments that we can make is that they don't meet the requirements of a waiver, for one, and then the other argument that can be made is that they don't meet the requirements of the special permit. And personally, I understand the perspective of precedent, and that's why I've tried to put a lot of thought into what makes this application. So again, when it comes to precedents, you're trying to draw connections between two applications. And for me, that's my point of view of looking at it is, well, what makes this application different than any other application that comes before us? And that's kind of how I'm trying to look at it. As far as special permit, all the requirements for special permit and for the requirements for the waiver, I tend to believe that they've filled all those requirements. So I would lean towards approval. Sean, it sounds like you're leaning towards denial. Is that correct? Or undecided?
Yeah, I'm going to wait to see the motion.
Okay.
I am leaning in that direction, but I want to see the motion.
Kevin, follow.
Yeah. So one of the things I also wanted to mention too, and Sean just reminded me of, is I've heard this commission say a couple of times, and we may or may not have said it on wetlands, I don't remember, but a question has been posed to the commission or an application has been proposed to the commission. They're not really liking it, not really in favor of it. But at the end of the day, people say they're forced to pass it because it meets the regulations, right? They don't like it, but the regulations say we have to allow it, so we have to allow it. In this particular case, we actually have a chance to deny something that we don't like. The regulations allow us to use our own deference to say, no, this is not acceptable. So I'm not saying that you take advantage of it and say no, just because now you're being given deference where you haven't had it before, but this gives us an out in that particular case. And
please don't misunderstand by me saying that I felt like it checks all the boxes. That's that is not saying that we are required to do this. I'm saying,
I understand.
When I look at it, that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I understand completely.
And it's perfectly fine for everyone else to have a difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing I'd like to mention, I'm not sure this is going to be apples to apples. So if it's not, absolutely call me out on it. A few meetings ago, we had the bishop's application and we put it to vote. And I had said I thought it was a good idea and I was going to vote in favor of it. And Mr. Johnson called me out, and actually, in hindsight, completely rightfully so. He said, doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you think it's right, it doesn't meet the regulations, and it goes against the precedent that we've been working really hard as a commission on the last couple of years. And it was a really good point. So I don't know if that precedent compares to this precedent that we're talking about, but it just reminded me of that conversation about precedent and the importance of maintaining precedents and setting precedents that make sense for the commission to enforce in the future. So I just wanted to bring that up.
And if you remember, during that conversation, I brought up the points that I could think of that made that application unique as the counterpoint, because it's important to look at it from both directions, I think. Mr. Freeman.
So I think for Scott's point, there are unique aspects to the things that we, in the case of Bishops, did not approve of. And in this case, in my feeling is I think they've met the requirements. They're improving the area. They've got a good plan for the lot and for the drainage. And I think it would be, I don't think it would set a precedent that we couldn't, if somebody came with another application that had issues that were very clearly not working, you know, they didn't meet the wetlands requirements, they didn't have drainage, they didn't, you know, didn't manage the stormwater or whatever, then I think that would be the case where we would deny it. But in this case, I think they put together a good application and I'm in favor of approving it.
3 of you left. Mr. Johnson.
I'm kind of leaning toward the only reason we're even having this discussion is because of the scope and size of this building. And this is what they want. You know, they want to have a bigger building. They want to have more coverage area than is typically allowed. And I don't believe that they've demonstrated a need that they need that much. It's just, it's more profitable to build a larger, bigger building on this very small lot. They easily could have brought forward an application that was fully compliant and we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
It wouldn't have come to us.
Correct. So I'm gonna have to chew on it for the next 2 weeks.
I mean, we can certainly have them provide both sides if
No, I mean, I
split on this.
I mean, I understand the want. I do. I mean, it's obviously, you know, more advantageous for them to have a bigger building with more potential space to occupy and to rent. But it's a serious deviation from the code. And I don't know why this one section allows us to do that versus a zoning board of appeals situation, but that's neither here nor there. It's in the code.
Right.
My preference would be, you know, for this not to be an item that we can vary from, that, you know, like any of the other setbacks or whatever, if they want to change it, it should go through zoning board of appeals and they should have to demonstrate a hardship with respect to it. But that's not what we have in front of us. So I understand that.
Correct, but I certainly think that it's worthwhile to throw that to Jamie to discuss with Glenn. Since we are in the process of updating our regulations, we might as well.
And it's so,
about it.
it is so appropriate that Jamie is all by herself in that room.
I was keeping myself company with the other computer on and it died, so.
Okay. Oh dear, oh dear. Okay, all right.
Duly noted, good conversation to have with Glenn.
Thank you. Mr. Sands.
Well, I have to say that I feel like the applicant is definitely pushing the limit on several fronts here. And I understand that that's what developers do. I continue to be troubled by this issue of the trees on the shared property line. And I don't feel at all comfortable that the applicant has has addressed that properly. I don't know. I'm on the fence. I mean, I agree that within the black letter of the regs, we probably could approve this thing.
Well, it comes.
I'm not.
yeah.
I'm not at the moment. I'm not real comfortable with that idea. But you know, if that's the way it's going to be, maybe in 2 weeks I can come to live with it. But I gotta say, this one. It just seems like they're pushing the limit at every corner.
So I would like to dissuade everyone from thinking in terms of whether our regulations are required, mostly because there are parts of, especially a special permit, that ask very subjective questions, and we each individually have to decide, whether it fits stipulation A, whether it fits stipulation B, and then we just come together as a group. I mean, so that's our purpose for being here, right? So I don't think we should talk in a language in terms of like, well, our hands are tied, we're required to do this or whatever. I think, again, it's make your determination. That's part of why we're here. So I think that's totally, Ted, I think that's a fine position for you to be in. And same thing with Philip in terms of being on the fence and not really leaning one way maybe, but I think that's fine as well. Frank, you're last up there, sir.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before in the beginning, when I spoke, I think there's some things that need to be addressed here. And like I said, this isn't the application that is going to address them. I think we have to take what's presented. There is things that are written that would allow this to happen with our discretion. So, like I said, I mean, and I've seen the stormwater management plan. I believe that engineers would not put their license on something and have the risk of losing that because they're falsifying something or making it to be what somebody wants to hear. Just like I don't think an attorney would do that to risk of getting disbarred. So I kind of, I take an engineer, a civil engineer's stormwater management plan very seriously, and they have addressed the issues that would cause my major concern. And like I said, I think there's a conversation that has to be had at another meeting to prevent or to, like Phil said, see this in not in our hands. So that's kind of where I'm leaning.
Okay. Jamie and Chuck, so that seems like you have some extra work to do from what I can tell.
It seems we have a motion for and against. So just prepare.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And do you feel like we've presented you with enough kind of information of our feelings both directions and able to draft something that would encompass our
or too much?
Right.
No, I think for the against motion, I know there was, you brought up 27380 in the criteria. And we kind of looked at it, but there wasn't a whole lot of discussion as to which ones you think I think for those who find in favor, yes, it complies with it. But for those who find against.
For those against, it's probably not fitting the character of the neighborhood. If I'm paraphrasing, obviously, because I have these memorized, but does anybody else want to speak up that might have a better that we're kind of leaning to against? I mean,
the first
you guys, I heard that it doesn't fit with the character.
Well, you under the 27380 under A, you could say the size is just too big for the location. I mean, the location, type, character, and size and use of any building or structure in connection with shall be at harmony. So I guess that's, you could hang your hat on that if you wanted to.
I mean, that's what it sounds like you guys, those that are against are at least saying.
Yeah, and there's alternatives.
Well, the size is driving the impervious surface, the size of the parking lot, the impact on trees. It's the size.
That's correct. Yeah,
that's it. That is the key point.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. And I think just generally, it sounds like we're in agreement. I know that Ted had concerns, but I haven't heard from anybody else that we're gonna really require anything related to the tree line. Does that sound correct to everyone?
I don't think we can.
Yeah, I think it, I mean, again, I feel like we can say that we, you know, the concerns of the neighbor, they put an entire page into their plans. So Mr. Lowenstein even offered to make a tree protection plan and provided and even said that we could provide that as a stipulation for approval. So I guess we could add that into the approval motion.
I think we should.
It's fine.
I agree. If they would prepare that kind of a plan, that would go some way towards making me more comfortable.
Great. Any other ideas, thoughts from anyone about what needs to get included in a for or needs to get included in against? And obviously we can add things on the fly if we need to in the next meeting.
Well, is there any aspect to what Janice was talking about as far as the four?
Yeah, let's discuss that. Does anyone have an opinion related to the CDOT making it more in compliance with CDOT?
But also to the point that she thought it was just generally a better setup with the two driveways combined, and so I think she was encouraging that as a positive.
Yes. So I guess the question, I mean, specifically is she's technically correct that sorry, my child. She's correct that you know, according to CDOT, that would be a safer driveway if it was tighter. Do we feel like that's a stipulation we need to?
How arduous is it for them to go through CTDOT to get that done?
I mean,
Extremely.
Okay.
Mr. Lowenstein, he paraphrased it really quickly, but you have to do site studies. You have to do
Right.
a fair amount of work.
It just takes a long time. It's got a lot of moving parts.
It's bureaucracy. Phil?
Exactly. If you don't have to touch it, I wouldn't touch it.
So, I mean,
As someone on Route 1. Yeah.
okay, sounds like we're feeling like we're not going to move forward and make that a stipulation of approval at this time. All right.
You're gonna get a call from Janice.
Well, let me look at it.
I know, but it's okay. We'll back you. Don't worry.
Okay, she did actually technically make her part of her stipulations. Yes, I was hoping that there was maybe like a may in there. Would be a great improvement. Okay. Any other comments that we need for Chuck and Jamie on this item? Great, thanks. Thanks.
Do we want to close this
Do we need to close our deliberation? Is there?
or continue?
I think we can just be done, right? Or do
No,
we
I
continue
think
our
you
decision?
just table the item and take it up
Okay.
next meeting.
So motion to table the item.
Make a motion to table this item to our next meeting.
Mr. Johnson,
So moved.
got a
Second.
second from Sean Cosgrove. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. And Jamie, in your opinion, do we still need Chuck's services for the remainder of the meeting?
I do not. I think that Chuck needs to stay on, but thank you, Chuck.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Chuck.
Chuck.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, great. New applications. Dean and Sarah Brown, 61 Dolan Drive, map 66, lot 45, zone R8, special permit application for an accessory structure greater than 750 square feet. The public hearing set for October 19, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson and Mr. DeAndrea. All in favor?
Aye.
And just FYI, just so everyone knows, the reason why I'm saying that now is because Jamie's all by herself and she might need to actually know who said the motion and who.
I'm taking notes.
No. If you need us to slow down and tell you what happened. Well,
Yeah, she's doing double duty.
Triple.
Exactly.
I've got the power of Zoom recordings.
yeah, that's true too. Okay, great. All right, other commission business. First item is approval of the minutes from September 21st, 2022. Has anyone been able to review the minutes from our last?
Substantially correct, sir.
Yes,
Oh,
they
that's
are.
I'm glad to hear it. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Freeman, second for Mr. Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And we got an abstention from Mr. Sands. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Well, it passed anyway.
I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I shouldn't vote on this.
Yeah, we'll have you put you down as abstention. Motion carries. Thank you. Second item is a request for a 90-day extension for filing with the town clerk of a 2-lot subdivision located at 2545 Long Hill Road, approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 6, 2022. That is the Fowler application that we approved. Jamie, any additional information you want to provide?
No, just that it made its way onto the agenda late, but they did send me 2 letters, I believe September 30th, they were received.
Need more time to do they just need more time to do their paperwork, basically?
Yes, correct.
I make a motion that we extend it for 90 days.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And
Second.
I'm gonna give it to Kevin Clark this time. Thank you for your second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed, unanimously. All right, Jamie, anything else on our, anything else in other business?
Yeah, so a couple things. We are holding a public forum at the Guilford Free Library on October 18th at 6:30 p.m. To discuss affordable housing. We will have the developers of Great Hill Commons, Mr. Chris Whitmer, Mr. Jim McMahon from the Memorial Estates or Hubbard Road development, and then also NeighborWorks New Horizons, who is behind the Woodruff affordable housing development. So updates on all 3 of those projects. We have a housing committee that is looking to formalize, and they'll be at the meeting. And also I will briefly discuss some of the elements in our new proposed zoning regulations that are meant to incentivize affordable housing. In addition to that, Mr.
Jamie,
Glenn-
just one second, sorry, just to interject. I've been on that committee for now. Can we figure out whether chairmans are supposed to be on committees, or if we would have to appoint somebody else from the commission to go on that committee?
Sure.
If
yeah.
there's requirements or not, but it seems
Yeah.
like it was something that we've been doing as a commission. I don't. If there's nothing against it, I don't mind maintain,
Yeah, I can ask Attorney Barrett. I think they're going to, the Board of Select people will, I believe, in order to formalize the committee, reconstitute the Housing Commission that I think was formed via town ordinance in the mid-90s, maybe.
Right, so that'll just be a question for them of if there's some stipulation about chairman from other commissions being.
I'm pretty sure as chairman, you get to sit ex officio on any committee.
Sure, I certainly would want to go, but it, doesn't matter to me.
Okay, just chucking it out.
Additionally, Mr. Glenn Chalder will join us on October 19th, which is our next meeting. I know I had expressed a desire to not entertain applications the second meeting of the month, but be things as they are, that was unavoidable for October. So we will, again, we'll continue 397 Church Street, and then we'll also hear the Brown accessory structure application But Glenn will be with us to review some of the questions around business districts that came up from our information session back in August, I think, around business districts. So, you know, he'll be available to answer any questions. I know one of the things that came up was around, you know, some carryover things from past plans along Route 1 West, some inconsistency in all the different districts about how things are permitted via special permit or site plan. So that would be the time to raise that with Glenn. Yeah. I think that's, we hired an assistant town planner. He will start October 24th. So I'm excited about that.
I have a question, Jamie. Is that then in lieu of a ZEO or?
It is a combined position. This will be the zoning enforcement officer. The idea was that giving the position more planning duties could elevate the salary, and hopefully in our case, I feel that is, I feel it worked. The assistant town planner that we've hired has extensive GIS capabilities. I think that's something that we as a department can do much better, especially in terms of geospatial analysis. We really aren't doing any you know, geospatial analysis right now in the department or in the town. So I think he brings a great skill set in that sense. You know, for zoning regulations and knowing kind of zoning enforcement and how to do it, Steve Natick, the acting zoning enforcement officer from Tyke Consultancy, will stay on. Hopefully I'm asking for 3 months of 2 days a week. We'll see if the first selectman would support that. And so that is the effort to onboard our new assistant town planner within the you know, space of our zoning regulations and enforcing.
All right, sounds great.
And be prepared, the minutes are going to look a little different.
So are all the commissioners aware? Are all the commissioners aware of the fact that Lisa is gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's probably new information to Ted, but.
Okay.
All right. No, with no further business, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
So move. Second.
Frank, thank you. Bill, for a second. All in favor?
Aye. Scott,
Aye.
Scott, great job.
Aye.
Good job,
Thanks,
Scott.
guys.
Excellent
for-
job.
No, I really appreciate everyone's input on this. You know, I really mean it when I say I think we need to, let's not worry about being restricted to something. Let's, you know, come up with your opinion. State your opinion. That's all that's what we're here for.
No, excellent discussion.
Yep.
Then I just want to know what Sean did to his finger. Or is that like a thing he did for sympathy?
I was cutting Brussels sprouts last night and I cut the tip of my finger off.
Oh my God, I've done that. Oh.
They were great.
That doesn't bleed much, does it?
I changed the recipe. They were